Okay, good morning, everybody. Hope everyone is keeping well, and welcome to this Hydrock webinar presentation. This is a webinar amongst a series of webinars that hosted by various divisions within Hydrock. This is our third webinar hosted by our Fire Safety Division. Follows first of which is called the Fire Safety Bill, what it means for your building, and the second, which is called the Future of the Mass Timber Constructions. If you want to know more details about the previous presentation, as well as the webinar recordings, as well as the webinars that hosted by our other divisions, I would like to direct you to the Hydrock website, or simply Google Hydrock webinar. You should be able to find them easily. Firstly, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Rui Sun, the Technical Director of Hydrock, having the responsibility of the fire engineering team and fire safety related research activities. I myself based in Manchester at the moment. So without further introduction, let's move on to the presentation. So this presentation delivered on behalf of our Fire Safety Division is titled The Fire Safety Bill and the Safety Case, How These Changes May Affect Future Construction. The presentation aims to discuss the draft Building Safety Bill published by the government in July 2020 and its potential impacts on building safety systems and how the bill will affect or change the way that the buildings are designed, constructed, and managed. So these are some contact details of myself, including my email and telephone numbers, just to as a part of our introduction of myself as well. So the structure of this webinar will be as follows. I'll give a brief introduction to the webinar's objectives. I would like to provide a short introduction to Hydrock and Hydrock's Fire Safety Division. We will then take a look at the timelines of significant events up to and after Grenfell Tower tragedy, as it's always good to understand how we get to the position we are in today. I will then give an overview of the draft Building Safety Bill and expand on how changes to be implemented by the new Building Safety Regulator and how these will affect the design, construction, and building management. I will then review the impact of the draft safety bill on the construction industry in both design, construction, and occupation stages. I will also discuss the building control reform and other provisions intended by the draft Building Safety Bill. Finally, I'd like to discuss the fire safety case and the safety case report and how it may be applied in the building environment. Before I start, I would like to outline some key limitations to this presentation. Firstly, you will have opportunity to ask questions via the message function. I will respond to a few questions at the end of the presentation. However, we will respond to all the questions. Those we don't answer today will be responded to within the next 7 working days. Could I please ask that when you ask questions, you include your name and details so we know who to respond to. We will also not responding to any questions relating to the ongoing public inquiry of the Grenfell tragedy. The draft Building Safety Bill contains a significant amount of information, including amendment to the Health and Safety at Work Act in 1974. It will be very time-consuming to cover all aspects of the bill. Therefore, this presentation aims to provide a review of the most important and significant development in the bill influencing the UK construction industry. But there will be still a lot of information in the presentation. It will take about 40 to 45 minutes. Hopefully it's not too long to you guys, but I think because it's a significant change proposed by the bill, it's definitely worthwhile for us to spend some time to explain the key element of this draft bill. It should also be noted that the draft bill is not a law yet. The bill is currently being scrutinized by the Parliament and is likely to come in force in 2021. However, it is important for the industry to prepare for it now, as it will be the biggest change, as I said before, to the building safety system and culture in nearly 40 years. In this section, I will provide a brief introduction to Hydrock and the Fire Safety Division of Hydrock. For those of you who attend our previous webinar, you may know this already. but for the benefits of those who may not know us, Hydrock is a multiple disciplinary engineering design consultancy. We have over 500 staff operating from 17 UK offices throughout the UK, including Manchester, London, Birmingham, Bristol, Cardiff, Glasgow, and Leeds. We provide a number of engineering services across the built environment and the natural environment. Our fire safety division was founded in 2017 and now has 30 fire safety professionals working in many of the UK's regional capitals, including London, Birmingham, Bristol, Cardiff, Manchester, and Glasgow. Our team has a broad range of expertise and experience, ranging from fire engineering, fire risk management, nuclear industry fire safety, expert readiness, external wall construction assessment, structural element, specialist service including complete fluid dynamic modeling, blast design, evacuation modeling, and the fire safety researchers. So in the following few slides, I wanted to highlight a few examples of projects that our fire safety division at Hydrock had worked on and the type of service we provided. The one you're seeing there is the Rockery at Hyde, which is a residential development in London, consists of 3 blocks ranging from 20 to 24 stories, which include 470 homes as well as commercial and retail spaces. We provide fire engineering throughout the design stages. And this is the Glasgow Harbour, which is a riverside residential development, consists of 321 homes. We are providing fire risk management during construction and fire engineering advisory for the new facade proposal and installations. This is the new Gulfstream hangar at Farnborough Airport, which is a new customer support service centre at the airport. The all-new 225,000 square foot facility can accommodate up to 13 large cabin aircraft and also contains office and workshop spaces, for which we provide a fire engineering service throughout the design and construction stages. So as I mentioned in the introduction, before discussing the Building Safety Bill specifically, I would like to take you through a timeline of significant events and advice before and after the Grenfell Tower tragedy, which had led to where we are in the fire safety industry today. Again, for those of you who attend our first 2 webinars, you may recognize these slides and the one following it. The timeline you can see here is mainly focused on over the past 3 years since Grenfell. The timeline includes all the key advice issued by the government, as shown in green, and the important reports, guidance, and bills as displayed in yellow. This slide is busy, but that is purposeful. This is what the building owner, building designer, and fire safety profession have had to navigate over the last 3 years, which has been challenging for some. The draft Building Safety Bill is published by government on 20th July 2020 for pre-legislative scrutiny. We will look at this document in great detail later in this presentation. There are a number of omissions from the timeline that I would like to highlight, and these also include significant advice and details. These include the government's response to the Grenfell Inquiry Phase 1 report and the government's response to the Judy Hackett report. The draft Building Safety Bill aims to drive the biggest change to the building safety regulation in nearly 40 years, as I mentioned before. The objective of the bill are to learn the lessons from the Grenfell Tower fire to remedy the systematic issues identified by the Judy Hackett report and strengthen the whole regulatory system in relation to the building safety. The bill aims to introduce a greater accountability and responsibility for fire and structural safety issues throughout the building life cycle. Therefore, the bill contains a wide-ranging changes from new and more stringent requirements on building safety standards and the introduction of a new building safety regulator to provide a stronger oversight of the safety and performance of all buildings, especially those classified as being the high risk building, which I will define what these mean shortly in this presentation. The main sections of the draft bill include the Building Safety Regulator and its function, Building Control Authority and Building Regulation outlining the reform of the building control system, the high risk building during the occupation, and other supplementary and general provisions. In the following few slides, I will discuss briefly the definition of the high risk building, the key points of the new regulatory regime, and the role of the new Building Safety Regulator. As the draft Building Safety Bill aims to implement a stringent regulatory regime to the high-risk building, it is then essential to clarify the definition of the high-risk building, i.e. the buildings in the scope of the new regime. The draft Building Safety Bill gave the Secretary of State the power to define the scope of the high-risk building by regulation under the advisement of the Building Safety Regulator. However, as mentioned in the explanatory notes of the draft bill, at the start of the new regulatory regime, it is proposed that the high-risk building are defined as those buildings which greater than 80 meters in height or more than 6 stories above the ground level and contains 2 or more dwellings, rooms for residential purpose or student accommodation. This still doesn't include the residential care home, secured residential institution, and temporary accommodations. But as mentioned above, the Secretary of State may increase the scope as and when necessary. Therefore, it is suggested that you consider the enhanced requirement and regulatory regime proposed by the draft Building Safety Bill and their impact on all type of the building with sleeping risk and or vulnerable persons. The more stringent regulatory regime will be introduced to the high-risk building, for which the key elements are summarized in this slide. It will involve the introduction of the duty order system throughout the life cycle of the building. It will involve the introduction of the gateway points during the planning, design, and construction stages. It also requires a golden thread of building information to be created, stored, and updated throughout the building life cycle by creating the building safety case and mandatory reporting system for fire and structural safety occurrence. The implement of the rights responsibility for the accountable person in relation to the occupied building, and also the requirement to engage and develop a strong partnership with residents to keep the building safe through a greater transparency and effective compliance handling. We will discuss each of these new requirements in more detail in the body of the presentation. Clearly, the new regulatory regime will result in significant change. In order to enforce the implementation and ongoing effectiveness of the new regime, i.e. monitoring the safety and the performance of all buildings, the role of a building safety regulator belonging to the Health and Safety Executive will be created. This will be a national role that oversees the building safety system with very broad responsibilities and functions. These fall into the following 3 main categories. Firstly, the Building Safety Regulator will be responsible for implementing a new and more stringent regulatory regime for high-risk building. The Building Safety Regulator will be the building control authority in respect of building works on high-risk buildings. It will oversee and enforce the new regime after occupation of high-risk buildings. It will also have a far-reaching investigatory power to ensure that the regulations are met and that the requirements on the Building Act 1984 are complied with. Secondly, it will oversee the ongoing safety and performance of all occupied buildings. This will include overseeing the performance of other building control bodies, such as local authority and registered building control approver. The new regulator will advise on existing and emerging building standards, ongoing safety risks, changes to the regulations, any changes to the scope of the new regulatory regime, and commissioning, furthermore, the risks in and about building. These are just only a few areas where the new building safety regulator will have responsibilities to. Thirdly, it will be the building safety regulator's responsibility to assist and encourage competency within the UK construction industry. This will involve the establishment and direction of an industry-led competency committee, which will publish relevant advice and guidance. The regulator will also be responsible for establishing an unified building control profession with competency requirement for registration. So to assist the in carrying out its functions, the building safety regulator will have the power to establish and direct committees to advise on the building functions. These will be 3 specific committees from the outside, which are the Building Advisory Committee, Committees on Industry Competency, and the Residents Panel. The Building Advisory Committee will replace the current Building Regulation Advisory Committee for England to provide advice and information to the Office of Building Safety Regulator to meet most of its building functions. The Industry Competence Committee will advise the Office of Building Safety Regulator and monitor the competency of relevant persons within the entire industry. The creation of the Resident Panel is designed to improve the communication between the residents and the higher risk building in the high risk building and the regulatory authorities. The panel will consist of high risk building residents and relevant other people that the building safety regulator considers appropriate. The Office of the Building Safety Regulator is required to consult the residents panel before issuing or revising certain guidance relevant to the residents of the high-risk buildings. In addition to the creation of the above 3 committees under the monitoring of the Secretary of State, the Building Safety Regulator will also have the power to issue directions to local governmental and fire and rescue service authorities to assist the regulator in meeting their functions. These slides you're seeing there presents the framework proposed by the draft Building Safety Bill, which will also form the structure of our the following sections of this presentation. In the following sections of the presentation, I will discuss the potential impact of the draft bill on the design, construction, post-occupation management of the building, as well as the building control system. The process and organization is complex, and we therefore have provided a organizational chart as an add memo in the following slides. The proposal in the draft Building Safety Bill will have a far-reaching influence on the UK's construction industry and buildings during their life cycle, from design, construction, refurbishment to post-completion occupation. In the following slides, I will focus on the key aspects and impacts that the bill may have on the design and construction of the building projects, namely the responsibility for duty holders and the power to set the competent requirement, the golden thread of the information, and a new gateway system. The principle adopted in the draft Building Safety Bill is to ensure that the person or entity that creates the building safety risk should, as far as possible, be responsible for managing that risk. These duty holders involved in the commissioning, design, construction, or refurbishment of a building will have formal responsibilities for compliance with the building regulations. This mirrors that the duty holders of the Construction, Design and Management Regulation 2015, including the client, principal designer, principal contractor, designers, and contractors. However, the proposed new regulatory regime provides more clarification and mechanism to enforce the certain responsibilities of the duty holders, such as it's to ensure that the duty holder and the people they employed are competent to do the work they are undertaking. That's related to the competency of them. And the duty holder will cooperate and share information with the building safety regulator, maintaining the golden thread information and establishing the framework for mandatory structural and fire risk occurrence reporting. That's related to the golden thread information. And to ensure the duty holder will comply with building regulation and specify regulatory requirements imposed on them. That's mainly through the gateway submissions. We will discuss each of these the three responsibilities in the following slides. The proposed bill will create powers to prescribe in building regulation the competency requirement on the principal designer and principal contractor and any prescribed person, and to impose the duties on the person appointing them to ensure that they meet the competency requirement. Although these powers will apply to all buildings, the requirement will be more stringent for high-risk buildings. Significantly, the client will be required to sign a declaration letter that they are satisfied that the principal designer, principal contractor they employed are competent enough to do the work they're doing. This may imply that some procurement activities, for example, pre-qualification process, would need enhancing to ensure that the competency is fully addressed and evidenced. The draft building safety bill places responsibility on the duty holder to cooperate and share information to ensure that the right people have the right information at the right time to ensure buildings are safe and building safety risks are managed throughout the building life cycle. This is called the golden thread information. These responsibilities go significantly beyond the current requirements for information sharing in CDM 2015, which are generally concentrated on managing the health and safety of the process of carrying out the work rather than how safe the complete building is, as well as the safety of the residents in and about the building. The digitalized information should include the original design intent and any sequential changes to support the safety improvement. This information will also be required in certain format by the Building Safety Regulator for the gateway application during the design construction phases, which will be explained later in the presentation. Therefore, for the new builds, the duty holder must start to collect this information from the early stage of the design. Once construction is completed, the information must be handed over to the accountable person, which is the duty holder of the building after the occupation, and also submit the information to the Building Safety Regulator. The Building Safety Regulator will also establish a mandatory reporting system for the duty holder to report the occurrence of any structural or fire safety related event which represent a significant risk to life in multi-occupied residential building within the scope of the new regime. This could be achieved by the expansion of the current confidential report on structural safety scheme to include the fire safety within this remit, in addition to the structural safety. As such, the duty holder, for example, the client, will be obligated to set up a functional internal framework to which the principal designer and principal contractor can and must submit the potential occurrence to. In order to ensure that the building safety risks are adequately considered and the design and construction are in compliance with the building regulation, 3 gateways will be implemented through the design and construction of the high-risk building, namely Gateway 1, Gateway 2, and Gateway 3. Gateway 1 utilizes the existing planning permission application process. It can occur before the duty holder are required to be in place. It is envisaged that the initial design consideration for fire and structural risk For example, the fire statement and qualitative design review statement for complex building should be presented to the regulator for approval. Therefore, the fire safety specialist will be expected to be involved in the design at early stage of the project. Gateway 2 occurs before the commencement of the construction phase. It strengthens the current building control full plan pre-site approval stage. Governed by this gateway application, the construction work cannot be started until the building safety regulator is satisfied that the duty holder's design meets the functional requirements of building regulation and does not contain any unrealistic safety management expectation. Therefore, the duty holder should submit key information to demonstrate how the building, once built, will comply with the building regulation. Design decisions in relation to the fire and structural safety should be well considered and justified at this stage. It's Hydrock's expectation that the information requested for the application will be based on the safety case of the building. The process may have impact on the ability of implementing design changes during the construction phase once the Gateway 2 sign-off is achieved. With the intent or with the intention to mitigate the approval risk, the contractor may want to or have to confirm the Gateway 2 sign-off before agreeing on the contract sum and commencing the construction work. They may also want to reduce the design changes in the construction stage to reduce the approval risk in Gateway 3 application. Therefore, it's expected that the longer design period would be required, and the earlier coordination and engagement with the subcontractor may be happening before the construction stage. Gateway 3 is at the completion or final certificate phase, where the building work was finished. Duty holder will be required to submit to the Office of the Building Safety Regulator all relevant documentations and informations, i.e. the safety case of the final as-built building. The Building Safety Regulator will then assess whether the work has been carried out according to the building regulation prior to issuing a completion certification to the building. The project can only be deemed as complete once the completion certificate is issued by the Building Safety Regulator. At this point, all prescribed document information, i.e. the golden thread information, must also be handed over to the accountable person of the building. We expect that with the instruction of these three gateways, the project program may need to be adjusted to allow for more time for the gateway application approval process. This will undoubtedly include responding to queries from the fire safety regulator before approvals are granted. So in the following section, I will then discuss the impact of the draft building safety bill on the buildings during the occupation. There will be a new duty holder referred as accountable person, which I mentioned a few times before already, during the occupation phase. The draft bill sets out the responsibilities for the accountable person and how they will be expected to interact with the building safety regulator and the residents within the building. We will discuss what these responsibilities are in the following slides. So, as I mentioned just now, the duty holder in the occupied phase of the building is accountable person, which is described as a person who holds a legal estate in possession in any part of the common parts, or a person who is under a relevant repairing obligation relating to any part of the common parts, unless they dedicate those obligations to another in a long lease. This means that the accountable person could be the freehold owner, sub-landlord, tenant, or management company with substantial repairing obligation. So what are the responsibilities for the accountable person? The responsibilities are rather broad for them, but the key elements are, as mentioned before, the accountable person needs to register the building with Building Safety Regulator before occupation and to apply for or renew a building assurance certificate. The accountable person needs to appoint the building safety manager for all high-risk buildings to support the day-to-day management for fire and structural safety. The accountable person also needs to create and maintain a resident engagement strategy. And they also need to manage and maintain the building safety case. They will also need to take all necessary steps to prevent major incident and ensure that the building has adequate insurance to cover those associated with building safety risks. Following the completion of the high-risk building, either newly built or refurbished, the accountable person will need to register the building with the Building Safety Regulator and to have a building assurance certificate before occupation. Existing buildings which are already occupied will also need to be registered. Existing buildings which are unoccupied at the introduction of the new regime will have to be registered by the point the building is occupied. The most recent issue of the certificate is to be displayed in a prominent position in the building. And also, the accountable person should appoint a building safety manager to manage fire and structural safety on a day-to-day basis. The manager should have adequate skills, knowledge, experience to manage the building in compliance with the safety case report and the building assurance certificate. The specific duties of the building safety manager include keeping the building's risk assessment under review, notifying the accountable person when the assessment appears to have become invalid or upon significant changes. However, the appointment of the building safety manager will not remove or divest the ultimate responsibilities for the building safety from the accountable person. The building safety regulator must also be notified of the appointment of the building safety manager, because the building safety regulator will have the power to veto the appointment if they deem that the person is not suitable for the role of the building safety manager. Because the purpose of this bill is to make the residents in and about the building feel safe and are safe, therefore the bill will place an obligation for the accountable person to maintain a residents' engagement strategy. This will identify how safety will be managed in practice and how complaints can be addressed. The accountable person and building safety manager will be jointly responsible for sharing the golden thread information with the building residents. The residents will be encouraged to participate in decision about the safety risk in their building through the engagement strategy. The strategy should set out that the residents will be consulted on, should set out what the residents will be consulted on, the information to be provided to them, and how their view will be taken into account. A compliant procedure is also to be proposed to create through which the residents can raise concerns with regard to the safety in their building or the accountable person's complaints with the residents' engagement strategy. Residents should also play a meaningful role in maintaining the building safety standards. For instance, the residents will be required to keep their gas and electrical appliances in good working order and take care not to damage a relevant safety item, for example, disabling an automatic closer on the fire safety doors. If it appears to the accountable person that a resident breached one of these duties, the accountable person can serve a notice to the residents requiring it to be remedied. And this can be enforced by an order from the county court. The residents will also be required to comply with any reasonable request from the accountable person for information to allow the accountable person to carry out their role. And yeah, the draft bill also introduced a major reform of the building control system, specifically for the high-risk building, which I will explain in this section of the presentation. The new bill aims to create a unified professional and regulatory structure for the building control system. It is proposed that the Building Safety Regulator will establish and maintain a register of building inspectors and building control approvers. Those currently known as approved inspector will need to register as a building control approver in order to undertake a building control work. The competency of the building control approver will be assessed during the registration process in order to meet a minimal standard. A role known as registered building inspector will be newly created. The registered building inspector will be able to provide advice on to local authorities or registered building control approver and or the building safety regulator to oversee the building work. The bill removes the ability of a person carrying out any building work for high-risk buildings to choose their own building control authority. The building control authority for high-risk building can only be the building safety regulator. Buildings other than higher risk buildings will continue to broadly subject to the current regime of building control, but the new bill provide the power for the Secretary of State to amend the framework more extensively if you want for the future building regulation. So limited by the time of this presentation, the other provisions by the bill will not be elaborated on, but instead highlight in these slides quickly. The construction products, currently the construction products are covered by EU construction products regulation, only where the EU standard applies. But the draft bill aims to extend control to all construction products in the UK to fall under a regulatory regime and create power to allow them to be withdrawn if they present a risk. The competency of the architect, the bill proposes to introduce power for the architect registration board to monitor the competency of the architects on their register and remove people from the register if they have not undertaken relevant trainings. Just for information, early this month, the Royal Institute of British Architects launched a new educational framework that focuses on fire safety, signifying a new direction of architectural education and CPD for health and life safety. The new home ombudsman scheme, this scheme allows the new built home buyer to comply to a new home ombudsman, which will hold the developer to account and have the power to require developers to pay compensation if needed. Okay, I've been talking a lot about various aspects of the draft building safety bill. One of the key elements in the bill, greatly influenced by the Hackett inquiry, is to create and retain the golden thread information throughout the life cycle of the building. This is proposed to be achieved by the development of a safety case for the buildings. In the following slides, I will be focusing on the fire safety case and covering the following points. What is the fire safety case and why we need it, and what a building fire safety case could look like. So the fire safety, the safety case and the safety case report are mentioned throughout the draft building safety bill. Within the government response to Building Safer Future consultation, the MHCLG defines a building safety case as a structured argument supported by a body of evidence that provides a compelling, comprehensible, evidenced, and valid case as to how a accountable person is proactively managing and controlling fire and structural risk within a building. Therefore, the purpose of the fire safety case is to demonstrate that a building as a system is safe with clear, comprehensible, and documentary evidence to support this claim. The digitalized golden thread information proposed by the new building safety bill is intended to form the basis of the building's fire safety case. Then the fire safety case report should then summarize the key components of the safety case in order to clearly demonstrate that the building will be safe for residential occupation and that all the fire risks has been considered and mitigated. The safety case report is a mandatory requirement. It will be presented to the Building Safety Regulator as part of the gateway application process, which takes place during the design and construction stage, as explained before, as well as the building assurance certification application in the occupation stage. The accountable person and the building safety manager will have the responsibilities to maintain, update the building's fire safety case and safety case report on an ongoing and regular basis in the post-completion and occupation stages. But the concept of the safety case is not new. It was originally developed in the American UK nuclear industry in middle 60s. The UK's offshore oil and gas industry adopted the safety case regime as concept in 1992 as part of the recommendation following the cooling inquiry into the Papa Alpha disaster, which probably most of you are aware of. It has been a key document to assist with the management of the system, a safety system of industrial facilities involved in, for example, oil, gas, nuclear, and chemical production. We have a few staffs worked in this industry before, and we will discuss our view on the, how the building fire safety case could look like in these slides. The implement of the building fire safety case in the UK construction will allow risk to be managed at all stages of the construction project and updated at any time by the project team or accountable person, as it will be or supposed to be a live document. The process of preparing the fire safety case could involve the followings. Start from identification of the fire hazard, evaluation of the fire risk associated with these hazards, determination of the necessary control and mitigation measures, recording the findings, the elevation and monitoring of the agreed mitigation measures. It should also detail how the building was designed, built, and maintained, and provide a record of the decision, giving a clear accountability trail for the decision making. For common residential buildings, where building regulation compliance is straightforward, we envisage that the design information, for example, decisions or approval from conceptual design to as-built stage, will be contained in the safety case. For large, complex buildings, a qualitative design review should be carried out at the design stage to reduce the risk of fire to an alarm level if where necessary. It's important that fire safety profession, architects, and the user and other stakeholders are part of this risk estimation and design review process. This exercise and any design decisions following the design review should, in our opinion, be documented in the building safety fire safety case. During the construction phase, the fire safety audits, as well as evidence that the fire system has been commissioned and tested by a competent person, should be documented in the safety cases as well. And following the occupation, the building fire safety case should be updated to include the building management system information that records the maintenance, inspection, and testing undertaken. Furthermore, evidence as to the competence of those carrying out the work should also be included. The resident engagement strategy, copy of any fire safety inspections carried out by the duty holder or regulator, and the copies of annual fire risk assessment and evidence of any actions taken following the advice from the fire risk assessment should also be included in the safety case. Although the creation of the building fire safety case is at its core to increase the transparency and accountability, there are challenges to hold all this information digitally, especially when trying to utilize the building information modeling techniques. It will firstly require close collaboration between different disciplines so that the necessary information can be assembled and updated in a timely manner. investment into BIM will also be a challenge, especially for the small and medium enterprise operating in the industry, and also for the small and medium-sized projects. Furthermore, adequate competency will be required to ensure that the data is correctly input into the safety case system and used appropriately to manage the fire safety throughout the building life cycle. The BIM technology is still an emerging technology that is still to be fully adopted across the industry. It is therefore envisaged that there will be a transition period before the golden thread information will be fully held by the BIM system. So, based on information provided in this presentation, the draft Building Safety Bill clearly outlines some significant changes to the fire safety culture and the fire safety system in the UK construction industry, by placing the safety of the residents at its heart. The bill is a legislative framework, and there are still many details to be discussed. For instance, there will be likely to be a lot of secondary legislation, and the bill still remains to be subject to public consultation. Difficulties may also be expected in the implementation of the whole system. But ultimately, in the opinion of Hydrock, the bill is expected to raise the fire safety standards across the industry. We feel that the building fire safety case will have a positive impact on collaborations as relevant disciplines, as it will require retaining and sharing information throughout the life cycle of the building. And there will be requirement for all stakeholders to ensure that the competency will be at the core of that business. The building safety building management system will also be changed for the best, as outlined in the Building Safety Bill. But we've already seen a lot of our clients have taken steps to proactively implement relevant systems or mechanism in their building or projects. For example, appointing a building safety manager, introducing systems and processes to retain a golden thread information throughout the design and construction stages. Instead of waiting for the bill to become a law, which may take some considerable time, we at Hydrock feel that our industry should proactively begin to implement the main changes where possible. Let's embrace the positive changes. With that, I want to see this is the end of the presentation today. I just want to take the time to thank everybody who dialed in, and hopefully, I know it's a lot of information into this presentation, but hopefully you find this useful and informative. I would like then to take some questions from you guys. Yeah, so I've got a question from Joy Blackman, Fire Safety Inspection Officers, West Midland Fire Service. Your question is, could contracts be held accountable if they create holes in fire doors frames or compartmentations where they are fitting new cables, etc.? We often find that the contracts have damaged the fire protection measures. Will the bill include anything related to control contract work once a building is occupied and deemed as safe? Right. First of all, thank you, Joy, for your for dialing in, and thank you for your great question there. I think my answer to that is yes, definitely. So I think the way that it works is that for the high-risk building, although the building safety regulator will be the building control authority, but they can appoint or approach the approved, or registered building inspector to do the or any other authority officers to do the inspections during the construction phase. It also, which is not mentioned in the presentation, and the bill also increased, increased the section power for the building safety regulator, where they can issue a stop notice to the site if they find that any construction work causes any sort of unacceptable fire risk there. They can issue that stop notice to the site. Until that notice is solved and the building safety regulator is satisfied with the remediation work, you can't really have any further construction work undertaken on the site. So there's a very, they have power to stop you there. Having said this, because they also, and even in the post-occupation stage, where when they do inspections, I would think it would be a regular base for the high-risk building. They can also issue a compliance notice to the accountable person for them to do the remediation work. If they fail to do that, then they will face an unlimited fine or even to a 2-year time in the prison. So I hope that answers your question. Let's see. So I've got one from a anonymous. So sorry. So there's no name left there or company, but the question will be: can the building safety manager role be delegated to a company, or must it be an individual? Will the building safety regulator manager be expected to be the at the building 24 hours a day, or is it a periodical role? Well, it can be a company with competent person. Obviously, the individuals. You don't always have to hire an individual as a building safety manager. You can hire a company, but the individuals employed by the company will have to be company enough. Their competency will have to be evaluated by the building safety regulator. And from my understanding, I don't think they need to be on site 24 hours, but they need to, like I said, because their key responsibility will be to review the building safety, risk assessment, and notifying if there's anything that they think is not valid anymore, or if the accountable person needs to do some more work to make the building even safer. So I think they probably need to be do the inspection to the building and review the document that is the live document regarding for example, the safety case for the building on a regular basis, and they inform the accountable person their findings to make sure that the accountable person are informed by the sort of the relevant risk level in their building. So I've got a question from Peter Quality. What qualification should the building safety manager have, and from what industry should they come? Thank you for your question, Peter. And so this is a good question, but I think this question also relates to the competency of not only the building safety manager, but all all peoples or relevant person involved in this full proof process. As you probably know from this presentation, that the bill places a very a big emphasis on the competency of people in the design, construction, also the post-occupation management of the building system. So I think at the moment it's a big question that the whole industry need to give the answer to. I think at the moment the step taken by the government is that I think the British Standard Institution are trying to put up an overarching competence framework for them to be used for all professions in the industry, and also set up a set of competency that for the principal contractor or principal designer hired by the client, which they can use to evaluate the competence of people in the during the construction, the design and construction phases. But for the building safety manager, I think there will be some guidance, I think, issued by the building safety regulator or the committees they're working with, to ensure that there are certain benchmarking that you can use to see whether your building safety manager is competent enough. And obviously, the building safety regulator will also evaluate or assess the competence of the building safety manager. Regarding from what industry they should come from, I would think definitely they should be from the construction industry. They should have the sufficient experience working in the industry, knows how the building works and how the risk assessment and remediation work to be carried out. So that's the sort of basic knowledge that they need to have to be able to advise to the accountable person. Yeah, so I've got a question from Stephen Halstead. Sorry, don't have your organization there. Your question is: do you anticipate any obstacles to implementing the fire safety bill requirement, i.e., adequate number of competent and qualified fire engineers? Thank you for your question, Steve. I think sorry, your question jumped over. But anyway, so I think your question is about the obstacles of fire safety bill. It's slightly different. This presentation is about the building safety bill, but I think in terms of the adequate, competent people in this industry, especially for fire engineers, is a good question. I think the whole industry. I know that the relevant institute are changing or implementing new methods to increase the trainings for their relevant members, and I think it's a whole thing, because the fire safety engineering is still, in my mind, is still a relatively new discipline in the construction industry. We have very good universities in the UK who can provide very good graduates being educated from the university. We also have different people from different backgrounds working in the fire safety industry. I think industry at the moment, we have many fire engineers in industry. We just need to take the steps ourselves to improve the people who's working in the industry, and also attract a lot of the new bloods into the industry, so we can have more and more competent person, get them trained up. Even the persons with great potentials, get them trained up so that we can catch up with the development of the whole industry and new changes in the industry as well. Hope that answers the question. So we have a lot of questions here. I'll tell you what, I'll stop here. And as I said before, I will respond to all these questions within 7 working days. And you can find my contact detail from the beginning of this presentation or from our Hydrock Fire Safety website, as well as other key persons of the Fire Safety Division in Hydrock. If you want to have a discussion, need more clarification or any help, please feel free to give us a call. We're here to help. And thank you again for your time to dial in, and I hope you have a very good autumn maybe, and also enjoy the rest time of your day. Thank you.